series, MSNBC original podcasts, exclusive bonus content, and all of your favorite MSNBC shows now ad-free. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Good to be with you. I'm Christina Ruffini in today for Katie Tur. There's been new escalation in Trump's tariff war. As the Wall Street Journal puts it, quote, the gloves are off. Trump is pushing the world's two biggest economic powers into a battle that neither will be unscathed and risk taking the global economy. They're talking about Beijing's latest announcement.
Bad navigation.
Into the U.S. The Chinese officials added in a statement that after this, they're done going tit for tat. Quote, given that at the current tariff level, U.S. exports to China are no longer commercially viable, China will not respond to any further tariff hikes by the U.S. on Chinese goods. So what will the immediate effects be for you, for the U.S. businesses, and for the economy? And what are the long-term ripple effects of U.S. goods no longer being, quote, market viable, as the statement says? All right, joining us now, we've got NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, CNBC Global Supply Chain reporter Lori Ann LaRocco, Senior Vice President and Director of Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, Shannon O'Neill, and New York Times White House correspondent Tyler Page. He's also the author of the book 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and the Democrats Lost America, which is out July 8th. All right, Vaughn, I want to start with you. Have we had any reaction from the White House to the reaction from China and this new 125% tariff?
Caroline Levitt was asked just a few moments ago specifically whether President Trump would pick up the phone call to call Xi Jinping and begin these negotiations or begin a stand-down effort on the tit-for-tat tariffs. And while she skirted that direct question, there is no apparent conversations or dialogue happening between China and the U.S. at this time. But she said that she was optimistic that China would understand that they need the U.S. economy and they need to maintain their relations with America, and that ultimately that they would come and find a way to strike a deal. Of course, during Trump's first administration, negotiations for phase one deal took almost 2 years, and the question here is, with tariffs now at 145% on Chinese goods coming into the United States, and now at 225% tariffs on U.S. goods going into China, you're talking about sky-high tariffs, which Chinese officials suggested overnight amounts to a near standstill of trading relations between the two nations, that these tariffs could not stand to go any higher, yet they have maintained that they are not going to back down. And so the question here is, will the United States begin to initiate that dialogue with China, or are we looking at a prolonged back and forth at a time that clearly the markets have suggested that simply 90-day pause for the other countries' trading partners, the China trade war is still of top concern here for investors at home.
And you heard the president in that long cabinet meeting yesterday say he wants to make a deal with China. He thinks he can make a deal with China. This does not seem to be going in the deal direction. Lorianne, I want to ask you about this phrase from that statement out of Beijing that U.S. goods would be no longer commercially viable. What does that mean, and how big a deal is that?
It's a huge deal. I mean, as you know, with the first trade war, agriculture has always been the crosshairs. But China showed the world that they didn't need U.S. soybeans. They actually started farming soybeans in Russia. In addition to this, in addition to the soybeans and other agriculture, you're looking at pharmaceuticals, electronics, oil, gas, and coal, and those are going to be slapped with a 125% tariff, and that effectively means that we're out of business there.
And Shannon, on that note, President Xi issued kind of a warning today in lieu of a direct phone call leader to leader with President Trump, saying, quote, there are no winners in a trade war, and going against the world will only lead to self-isolation. On Friday, according to CCTV's China State broadcaster, that's where this came out. He also said for over 70 years, China's development has relied on self-reliance, never on handouts from others, and it is not afraid of any unjust suppression. That kind of seems to me like she's saying if it's a battle of whose population is going to be willing to endure economic hardship, come at us. What does that statement say to you, Shannon?
Yeah, those are fighting words, I would say, right? This isn't making of a deal. And what I would say is, since the last set of Trump tariffs that began in 2018, that then became Biden tariffs, that we have seen China systematically tried to change and diversify its trading partners. So we have seen a big shift. They trade more today with Southeast Asia than they do with the United States. They trade more with lots of other emerging markets than they do with the United States and Europe. So we've seen them begin to move away from the U.S. And while this will hit China hard, right? They send $460 billion worth of goods to the United States each year, which will fall down dramatically. They have been moving to other markets, and as they've moved into other markets and expanded their presence there, they've also expanded their presence in global trade. So they are making moves already to de-link themselves from the United States. And this
options are left for the Trump administration if they want to keep this going. China has said, we're not going any further on this. I've seen conversations that maybe the U.S. could kick China off of the international banking system. Is that realistic? Where do you think it goes from here?
I think it's hard to predict exactly what Donald Trump will do next. As we've seen over the past several weeks, he's said a lot about what he wanted to do on tariffs, and we've seen what he's actually done change quite a bit over the course of the implementation process here. But it is clear that the undergirding, the idea that is undergirding this trade war is to try to isolate China. One of the ways that his advisor, that's my colleagues and I reported in the New York Times, got him to back down from these reciprocal tariffs was to make this more about isolating China from the rest of the world. And one of the things I've heard from sources is that the Trump administration was growing increasingly concerned that Japan and South Korea were looking at becoming more aligned with China as it related to responding to these tariffs. That was a cause for concern within the Trump administration. So we know that the president is very focused on trying to win this quote-unquote trade war with China as it stands right now. What other options he may take? Clearly, there are a lot of things in the toolkit for the U.S. to deploy, but it's hard to predict exactly what direction this will go. And I think it's also important to remember that what impacts this has on the rest of the market and the global economy will be key here. Obviously, one of the things about China is Treasury bond. That is something that we saw spooked the president and his economic advisors, as we saw that sharp sell-off earlier in the week. So that's another thing to keep an eye on, is how these tariffs and the escalation impact the broader economic market.
And Ron, President Trump did appear to feel pressure from Wall Street ahead of the 90-day pause. You heard Tyler just talk about kind of the international aspect of that. There was that rather unprecedented meeting between economic ministers from China, Japan, and South Korea. But is there any amount of voter pressure he may feel on this specific issue that could change his mind about tariffs on China?
Right. We have seen in initial polling that when it comes to his handling of the economy, we have seen a majority of Americans disapprove of his agenda. At the same time, I mean, in so many ways, this echoes what he endured through his first administration. And there was much scrutiny. Some of his most loyal supporters, particularly in the agricultural industry, were the ones that were on the front lines of bearing the brunt of the financial losses caused by trade war with China. And yet, the administration backfilled a great amount of their losses with ultimately $28 billion in financial relief payments to farmers across the country. And I think that is where you continue to hear from Americans on the ground. There is a desire and a hope that they believe in the long run that he will ultimately be able to put some trade deals together, and that the U.S. will benefit from these efforts. So right now, there is no consequence that we see, yet at the same time, that doesn't mean that there's not consternation about some of those financial losses mounting again and an increase in consumer goods. So for the president right now, he believes of the decade that he's been in power, that he is able to make a pitch to the American public that these battles are worth waging and that dominance over China is a fight worth having, and it's going to be seen over the course of these months if in fact he holds his ground, whether the American public at large sticks by his side.
But Tyler, when it comes to messaging, has the president left himself any room to maneuver when it comes to the China issue? You've highlighted the change around the narratives before the 90-day pause from the initial claim that, this was always the plan, as we heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, to Trump directly referencing market volatility just a day later and even saying, he saw Jamie Dimon talking about this on TV. But it's more complicated with China, because if China doesn't back down, do you think the president and the White House can figure out a way to make a deal that the U.S. would have to start capitulating on, or is that just off the table for this president?
I mean, one of the things that we've come to know about Donald Trump is that he's always trying to look for a deal and is able to spin it in the favor that he wants to. And he will find a willing audience in the Republican Party in Washington and throughout the country, often willing to fall in line and support whatever sort of messaging tactic he decides to do. We saw that with some of the Republican critics of his trade policy so far, very quickly falling in line and saying that it was brilliant maneuvering and, quoting from his book, The Art of the Deal, after he backed off some of the reciprocal tariffs. So I think the messaging is less of the concern for the president than it is the implementation and the impacts on Americans across the country. We're already seeing some members of Congress grow concerned about the impacts this economic situation could have as we move closer to the 2026 midterms. I know we just finished the November elections, but already those are underway with primary fights and eventually a contested race for the House and for some of these tight Senate races. So I think it's really going to be, as Vaughn was saying, as the months go by and this trade war really starts to hit Americans' bottom line, that's where we might see the president start to feel some real pressure. But so far, he has had a greater appetite for risk when it comes to markets than I think a lot of, even some of his supporters anticipate.
Tyler, it is a Friday at the end of a very long week. I am not ready to hear the word election right now. It's okay. Shannon, but I want to talk to you about the flip side of this, because the impact on China, despite Xi saying, he's not afraid, a full-blown trade war with the U.S. means being shut out of the world's biggest consumer market. The Chinese economy is tailored to sell cheap goods to China. So is it possible that with enough prolonged pressure, we actually see China blink and come to the negotiating table?
Definitely going to hit the Chinese economy, and already they were having serious domestic problems in the real estate markets with their own domestic consumption. And we've seen over the last year a huge surge of exports out to the world precisely to revive the Chinese economy or give it sort of a boost. So this cuts out one of its biggest markets. But as I said before, China has started to move away from the United States as its main source or location for where it sends its goods. It started to focus on other markets, and I do think we will see it double down on that, looking at all kinds of markets around the world, whether that's the European Union, whether that's Asia, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, other places. They will double down on those efforts. Now, they won't be able to make up for the U.S. market, assuming these tariffs stay there. It will be a big hit to China. But we also there have a political system that is all aligned behind Xi. So he does have the flexibility and the ability to handle the political pain. He, unlike the Republicans, will not face elections most likely in 2026.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard, Lorianne LaRocco, Shannon O'Neill, and Tyler Page, thank you all for joining us. And an NTSB press conference in New Jersey just wrapped. Officials there gave an update on the investigation into what caused Thursday's deadly helicopter crash in the Hudson River. Crews are still we learn more about the flight's final moments and the people on board. A warning, the footage we're about to show is distressing. The helicopter was on a sightseeing tour when it appeared to break apart in midair before plunging into the water yesterday afternoon. All 6 people on board were killed, including the pilot and a family visiting from Spain with 3 children. According to the Jersey City Mayor's office, today would have been the 8-year-old's birthday. All right, joining us now, MSNBC aviation analyst John Cox. John, what are we learning? Did we get anything new, which just really piqued your ears out of that press conference? And how does this happen?
Well, I think first, the NTSB, like correctly said, that right now they're gathering data, and that's the most important thing they can do, for evidence is perishable. So they're going to look very carefully to understand what caused the mid-air breakup of this helicopter. Once they get as much information as they can from the wreckage, then they can begin to assemble the sequence of events that led to this breakup. At that point, then they'll have an idea. They're still looking for components. I've noticed that they said they had not yet found the main rotor system nor the transmission. And I think that those are things that they are certainly going to want to find. So it's right now it's an exercise in patience. The videos are very, very, very telling, and will be a lot of help. The NTSB chairwoman asked for anybody that has any videos to please make them available. I would second that. So we're going to have to be patient here and learn if this was a mechanical problem, if this was a bird collision, if this was
the Chinese economy or give it sort of a boost. So this cuts out one of its biggest markets down on that. Looking at we also there have a pool.
O'Neill and Tyler Page, thank you all for joining us. And an NTSB press conference in New Jersey just wrapped. Officials there gave an update on the investigation into what caused Thursday's deadly helicopter crash in the Hudson River. Crews are still pulling debris out of the water as we learn more about the flight's final moments and the people on board. A warning, the footage we're about to show is distressing. The helicopter was on a sightseeing tour when it appeared to break apart in midair before plunging into the water yesterday afternoon. All 6 people on board were killed, including the pilot and a family visiting from Spain with 3 children. According to the Jersey City Mayor's office, today would have been the 8-year-old's birthday. All right, joining us now, MSNBC aviation analyst John Cox. John, what are we learning? Did we get anything new which has really piqued your...
Want to win money on your car insurance?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Try Insurify. We help you compare quotes and save half on your car insurance.
I like it when things are convenient and save me lots of money.
Go to Insurify.com and save up to $1,000 a year on your car insurance.
Get more use and enjoyment from your porch, patio, or deck with patio enclosures. Let us help you create the perfect room for the things you love. Right now, get 25% off your sunroom or enclosure project.
We now have millions of gallons, billions actually, they say, of gallons of water pouring into California from the Pacific Northwest. I guess I would say mostly Pacific Northwest, but other parts of the northern sections of California and beyond. And it's a beautiful thing to see. I saw a picture of it this morning. The water's just flowing down there. I said, why didn't they do this? I told them to do it my first term. I said, do it. And I don't know. I think the second term is just more powerful. They do it. When I say do it, they do it, right?
Billions of gallons of water from federally controlled reservoirs to fight wildfires in California was something President Trump tried and failed to make happen the last time he was in the White House. And the New Yorker's Susan Glazer writes that it's just part of a long, outstanding to-do list Trump is set on accomplishing now that he's back at 1600. And most of the people who would have tried to stop him are not. Whether it's ending globalization or personally dictating the water flow of federal land in the West, unfinished business is the business of Trump's second term. It's a do-over presidency with no precedent in America's modern history. All right, joining us now is staff writer of the New Yorker's Letters from Trump's Washington, Susan Glasser, and staff writer for The Atlantic and MSNBC political contributor Mark Leibovitz. Susan, all presidents continue their agenda when they get a second term, and sometimes more fervently because they feel like they've got a second mandate to do their thing. But you say Trump's business of pushing through his unfinished business use the words manic and obsession. Is there a particular problem with the way he's going about his second time at bat?
Well, look, the global economic crisis spurred by Trump's pushing through a maximalist version of his tariffs is an example of something that Trump felt stymied from doing in the way that he really wanted to do it in his first term in office. So some of the story is about, coming back into power and undoing that which Joe Biden did. That's a familiar dynamic in American politics, so polarized. One president of one party comes in and George W. Bush leaves and Barack Obama wants to reverse his policies. But what's really unique here is that Donald Trump, is in part fighting with the ghost of all the advisors he himself hired in the first term in office, many of whom objected to his most radical, disruptive, or at times even illegal plans. He doesn't have advisors like that around him anymore. That's why you see fast and maximal action, not just on tariffs, on foreign policy generally, even on something as petty but Trump obsessive as ordering the Corps of Engineers to unleash water in reservoirs in California. Just the other day, he had a ceremony about the water in shower heads, which is reversing a Biden-era reversal of Donald Trump's order in his first term, reversing an Obama order. Okay, this is all about so many grievances, so many scores to settle, including with his own advisors.
And Susan, speaking of ceremonies, another item on Trump's first-term agenda that is now in the early planning discussions is a lavish military parade from Arlington to the White House that coincides with Trump's 79th birthday and the Army's 250th anniversary. This is one of those things that he wanted, and advisors the first time said, this is not what we do here. This is what dictators do. The optics of this are not great. Why is it back on the table? And is there just no one in the second term who will check him? And if they do, they just don't last?
You know, I mean, look, he's now surrounded by people who are literally wearing little gold pins with Donald Trump's head on them. So these are not people who are inclined to deny him a military parade if that's what he wants. This was a fixation of Trump's, as you said, in his first term, ever since he went to a Bastille Day parade in France in the summer of 2017. He wanted one here in Washington. The Pentagon pushed back very hard. You know, I talked to so many senior officials in that first Trump administration who just groaned when the topic came up of how they had to manage and try to get Trump off the military parade. So it would be very symbolic, representing almost his own victory over those people who were constraining him in his first term. But it's not just optics. You know, look at the tariffs, and I would suggest look at the very significant disruptive policies he wanted but didn't affect in his first term, like withdrawing U.S. troops from Germany, withdrawing U.S. troops from South Korea, undermining NATO. Those are the kind of agenda items, invoking the Insurrection Act. Those are the kind of items that I expect to see as this Trump administration 2.0 goes forward.
Mark, is there any kind of political risk for Trump with enacting so many policies that are, for better or worse, backwards looking? Look, if you voted for him, he's doing what he said he was going to do. When you look at his policies, even things that could change the system or move things forward, the end goal seems to be make America great again as it was previously or during my first term, or put things back the way they were. Is that something long term that could turn voters off if there's not a tangible plan for the future?
I think it's something that could turn voters off short term. I think it probably already has if you look at the last few weeks with tariffs and so forth. And look, it's not so much make America great again at this point. It's just do what Donald Trump says. It's bring glory to Donald Trump. And everything in Susan's piece and everything you talked about previous to this about tariffs, around the military parade, around the stuff with water release in California. Yes, these are relatively small compared to what we could see coming down the pike. With you don't see people like Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, or Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, or anyone sort of stepping in front of the real disasters that were averted in the first term, whether it's prosecuting, a even more pliable Attorney General, vote counting, future elections. I mean, there's just not a infrastructure in place, and this certainly extends to Congress, of whether Mike Johnson or a J.D. Vance or something, when it comes to actually counting votes in the future elections, would actually stand down from the way Pence did, the way the leaders who were in place then did. So look, I mean, this could get very scary really quickly, but I don't think in the short term there's a great sentiment among voters, and certainly consumer confidence and the economic indicators that is very impressed by all this so far. So I think the threat could be more politically here and now.
And Mark, quickly before I let you guys go, I want to ask what your view is on where all this is leading. Is there any fear that, grievance-based governance could outlast Trump? DC, once a precedent is broken, it tends to stay broken. Could this be the new normal?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like whoever's in or out of power have different definitions of what broken is. I mean, we haven't, one thing we haven't seen, and I don't know if there's a reason for hope or whatever, depending on your perspective on this, it's hard to sort of see this happening without Trump. We have seen, even if you look sort of as narrowly at the ballot box, I mean, without Trump, a lot of this tends to break down. A lot of the order inside the GOP, such as it is, breaks down. I mean, there's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of infighting anyway. There's probably quite a bit going on now that we're not seeing or knowing about. And I think, look, I mean, what does the GOP look like after this? I think that's sort of the open question.
All right, Susan Glasser and Mark Leibovich, thank you both so much. And coming up, is Doge spying on federal employees? What dozens of workers are accusing Elon Musk of using. Plus, the Supreme Court has ruled on the case of a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to an El Salvadoran prison. What it's ordering the White House to do now. We'll be right back.
With Fast Signs, see the visual possibility in your business. With signs and graphics, you can save anything. Transforming your space begins at our place. Fast Signs, make your statement.
A diagnosis doesn't define you. Even ATTR cardiac amyloidosis. You've come a long way. Your path was never set in stone. You charged ahead. So why would life with ATTR-CM define you? You have the power of choice. Attruby is an oral medicine used to treat adults with ATTR-CM to reduce death and hospitalization related to heart problems. People taking Attruby saw an impact on health-related quality of life and were 50% less likely to be hospitalized for heart issues, giving you more chances to do what you love with who you love. Tell your doctor if you're pregnant, plan to become pregnant, or are breastfeeding, and about the medications you take. The most common side effects were mild and included diarrhea and abdominal pain. If you have ATTR cardiac amyloidosis, ask your cardiologist if Attruby is right for you. It's time to get busy living.
Can you imagine doing this?
Would you like to receive a discount or pay the full price?
Full price. Kind of ridiculous, right? Well, so is not taking advantage of an AARP membership, because AARP has a ridiculous offer. Just $15 the first year with automatic renewal, plus a second membership free.
That is ridiculous.
So take advantage of hundreds of programs, services, and discounts from AARP, like financial tools, job resources, and the Fraud Watch network that helps you spot and avoid scams. Plus, discounts on gas, cell phone plans, and streaming services. And know this, your membership matters, as AARP advocates on important issues like healthcare, Social Security, and age discrimination in the workplace. And that offer gets more ridiculous. Get AARP for just $15 the first year with automatic renewal and a second membership free. Plus AARP the magazine and this insulated trunk organizer free. Go online or call now.
Prilosec knows for a fire, one fire extinguisher beats 10 buckets of water. And for zero heartburn, one Prilosec a day beats taking up to 10 antacids a day. It's that simple. For 24-hour heartburn relief, one beats 10. Prilosec OTC.
You've got a subscription for streaming movies and music, maybe even one for food. But what about when it's your water line that's streaming? Repairs are expensive. Good contractors hard to find. The plan from HomeServe is like a subscription for peace of mind. For one small monthly fee, when a covered system breaks, we'll send a qualified contractor and pay for the repair. Why worry? Get HomeServe and chill.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month.
Call 1-833-735-4495 or visit homeserve.com.
I'm always shopping the Real.
They drop over 10,000 new arrivals every day from the luxury brands I'm obsessed with.
All up to 90% off retail.
Gucci, Prada,
Louis Vuitton,
Hermes, Dior,
Cartier,
Tiffany.
Resale that's been authenticated by true experts.
No one else can say all that, because no one does resale like the Real.
Thousands of new arrivals up to 90% off retail.
Millions of people, millions of possibilities. Only on The Real. Shop now and get 20% off therealreal.com.
Index reports by desk by noon.
Are you getting any of this?
Yeah, Otter's got the meeting notes. I'll ask it for action items in the channel. And Maria already asked for a budget reminder. Smart.
Got it?
Got it, boss. Otter, you got this.
We just signed the lease on our third shop. My assistant went to customink.com to get new uniforms with all the locations. He found great products, uploaded new art, and had boxes sent to all the shops. Custom Ink makes it so easy. Get started today at customink.com.
Each week, veteran lawyers Andrew Weissman and Mary McCord break down the latest developments inside the Trump administration's Department of Justice.
The administration doesn't necessarily want to be questioned on any of its policy.
Main Justice. New episodes drop every Tuesday. President Trump's first 100 days. Watch.
I'm going to be here 5 days a week again.
Read and listen.
Staying up half the night reading executive orders.
For this defining time in the second Trump presidency, stay with MSNBC.
Managers at 2 federal agencies have warned staffers that DOJ might be secretly monitoring their communications, including using software to track computer activity and possibly using artificial intelligence to scan for disloyalty or DEI buzzwords. That's according to new reporting from Crooked Media and The Guardian. They spoke to more than 24 federal employees who shared emails from agency officials and screen grabs. One employee from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development put it like this, quote, "It's like being in a horror film where you know something out there wants to kill you, but you never know when or how or who it is." All right, joining us now, Crooked Media correspondent and anchor of What a Day newsletter, Matt Berg, and Crooked Media news editor, Greg Walter. Matt, I want to start with you. What is the big takeaway? When you guys did this, you talked to all these people. What is the thing that stood out, and what's the big picture of this investigation?
The big picture here is that anxiety and fear are running rampant among federal employees, in part because some of them have been told that DOJ is monitoring their workplace, whether that be with artificial intelligence or just snooping out
by whom?
Their managers at these at least 2 agencies that they're being monitored secretly in meetings.
Greg, what exactly are they monitoring for? Are they scanning for disloyalty? Are they scanning for, I don't know what?
Well, great question. DOJ has promised the American people both efficiency and transparency. It doesn't really seem to be delivering either one. But one of the things that the managers are warning employees about is they need to be careful with what they're talking about, because they shouldn't criticize Trump or Elon Musk or DOJ, and to be really cautious about what they're saying.
So in addition to writing their 5 things emails, which is the complaining I hear most from the government I'm talking to, they now have to worry about what they're saying even in their office. Greg, I also want to ask you, according to this new report, EPA managers told employees that DOJ was using AI to scan through agency communications to find any anti-Musk, anti-DOJ, as you just mentioned, or anti-Trump sentiments, adding that employees should be, quote, very careful about what they say in private messages and virtual meetings. All right, you've been around D.C. for a while. You've done a lot of reporting on the federal workforce. What impact do you think this is going to have in people's day-to-day effectiveness when they're afraid to even say something they think might be wrong with a program or whatever?
Well, I think this is reporting by Matt here and also Joseph Gideon from The Guardian. And what they found was that federal workers are scared. They're nervous. They're losing sleep. They're not able to focus on what they're doing. They're worried about employees who have been fired. They're worried about being fired themselves. And in addition, they are very concerned about surveillance. We've heard stories of some people who have gotten white noise machines to turn on in their office. We've heard stories about people going into an office break room to turn on the faucet. You know, kind of
like out of a spy movie, like get in the shower so we can have a conversation.
It's like old school Cold War. They're worried about it.
All right, Matt, I do need to say the White House has issued a blanket denial saying, in part, quote, "None of this story is true," and another fake news reporter is once again missing the point of DOJ. The EPA also denied its recording meetings, and the VA, you said, didn't respond to comment. Do you have a response to their response?
The managers seem to think otherwise. I think that DOJ is in fact doing the spying. The State Department also denied that they are scanning for loyalty or other quote ridiculous purposes. But the State Department is also aware these people are turning on the sinks and are worried that how many people might be around. So managers seem to think otherwise at least 2 agencies.
I mean, it's been clear to government employees for years in Washington that people could or might be listening to them. And I used to work in the State Department booth, and people would say, like, just be careful what you say around. So what's different about this, Greg? Is this just a whole other level?
What's new is that managers are warning employees to be careful about not just whether you're spilling state secrets or whether you are saying something that could be embarrassing if it got out. They're telling them, don't criticize Donald Trump. Be careful about criticizing Elon Musk. Be careful about criticizing DOJ. And this is happening in the context when a lot of people are losing their jobs. They're uncertain about their future. And what Matt and Joseph found is a real culture of managers telling federal workers to be careful and federal workers taking extraordinary steps to be careful about what they're saying in these official lines of communication.
And Matt, very quickly before I let you guys go, all right, so you've already got people stressing about losing their jobs. You've got people stressing about whether or not they write these 5 things emails. On top of that, they're stressed about what they say. Do people have the bandwidth to do their jobs? Is this going to impact like the actual efficacy of these agencies?
What I'm hearing from about 24 people who are in these agencies is that this is a huge distraction for them. They're worried, they're nervous, they don't want to come to work, and in a lot of ways that might be the point of this.
All right, Matt and Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead, what the Supreme Court says the White House must do after mistakenly deporting a Maryland man to a notorious prison in El Salvador. Plus, a critical hearing is underway right now in the case of Columbia University graduate Mahmoud Khalil, what an immigration judge is set to decide. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cheers to beating these two every Thursday.
Help fuel today with Boost High Protein. Complete nutrition you need and the flavor you love. So here's to now. Now available Boost Max.
Have you always had trouble with your weight? Me too.
Discover the power of Wegovy.
With Wegovy, I lost 35 pounds. And some lost over 46 pounds.
And I'm keeping the weight off.
Reducing my risk.
Wegovy is the only weight management medicine proven to reduce risk of major cardiovascular events such as death, heart attack, or stroke in adults with known heart disease and obesity.
Don't use Wegovy with semaglutide or GLP-1 medicines or in children under 12. Don't take if you or your family had MTC, MEN2, or if allergic to it. Tell your provider if you plan to have surgery or a procedure, are breastfeeding, pregnant, or plan to be. Stop taking and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, or any of these allergic reactions. Serious side effects may include pancreas inflammation and gallbladder or severe stomach problems. Call your prescriber if you have any of these symptoms. Wegovy may cause low blood sugar in people with diabetes, especially if you take medicines to treat diabetes. Call your prescriber about vision changes, if you feel your heart racing while at rest, or if you have mental changes. Depression or thoughts of suicide may occur. Common side effects include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, stomach pain, flu or upset, headache, feeling tired, dizzy or bloated, gas, and heartburn. Some side effects lead to dehydration, which may cause kidney problems.
With Wegovy,
I'm losing weight.
I'm keeping it off.
And I'm lowering my CV risk.
Ask your prescriber about Wegovy.
Sail through the heart of historic cities and unforgettable scenery with Viking. Unpack once and get closer to iconic landmarks, local life, and cultural treasures. Because when you experience Europe on a Viking longship, you'll spend less time getting there and more time being there. Viking, exploring the world in comfort.
Hey, bro. What's this? Is dog food in the fridge?
It's not dog food. It's fresh pet. Real meat, real veggies for my boy Junior.
What are we doing here?
Anybody asks, we were at Grandma's.
Your cardiovascular system is at the center of your heart health and at the center of every blood pressure supplement from Human, clinically studied plant-based ingredients, inspired by groundbreaking science for all the moments your heart beats for. Get started today at livehuman.com.
No matter what kind of teeth you gotta brush, Oral-B Electric cleans better with one simple touch. Oral-B's dentist-inspired round brush head hugs them, cleans them, and gets in between them for 100% cleaner teeth. Your perfect clean starts with Oral-B.
Hi, Grandma. I played baseball today.
Oh, that's great.
What position did you play?
First base.
That's where Grandpa used to play.
When our hearing wouldn't allow us to use a regular phone, it made us feel isolated.
It became difficult to communicate with our friends and family.
Clear Captions was an easy solution for us.
Clear Captions provides captions on a phone like captioning on your TV, so you can see what the caller is saying live as they say it.
Making it easy to understand and respond immediately.
There is no insurance or Medicare required. Clear Captions service is provided at no cost to you through a federally funded program. We deliver, install, and train you on how to use your phone, all at no cost to you.
Give your loved ones the independence and connection they deserve.
Call now to see if you qualify to get a Clear Captions phone at no cost to you.
Call 1-800-403-7539. That's 1-800-403-7539.
Guys, reach peak performance through Ro. With access to prescription medications uniquely designed to suit your needs. We got you. Connect with a provider at ro.co/peak.
With 4imprint, you get more than promo products. You get the certainty of personal service, design expertise, and unmatched quality to make your moment shine. Be 4imprint certain at 4imprint.com.
4imprint for certain.
Earlier this week, staff at the LA Unified School District denied access to the Department of Homeland Security when officials said they were there to conduct welfare checks on children that had arrived unaccompanied at the border. The officers showed up to the school asking to speak to young students without their guardians present. The district superintendent says his employees did what they've been trained to do.
Actions were taken in this community that have no place in our city, in our state, or across America. These students range in grades from 1st to 6th grade. My very first question starts there. What interest should a Homeland Security agent have in a 1st grader, or a 2nd grader, a 3rd grader, or a 4th grader for that matter?
The Supreme Court has ordered the Trump administration to take steps to get a man mistakenly deported back from a notorious mega prison in El Salvador. Xiomar Abrego Garcia was deported through what officials call a, quote, administrative error in March. And yet the Trump administration has said they couldn't and wouldn't bring him back to the States. The Supreme Court determined the administration must take steps to facilitate his return. All right, joining us now, NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Julia, the deadline is today. What information was DHS supposed to provide by that deadline?
Yeah, the Justice Department was supposed to get the information from DHS and take it to Judge Palazinas in Maryland during a 1 p.m. court hearing today. This is after she had already ordered them to return Abrego Garcia from El Salvador. And then, of course, they didn't do so after the Supreme Court put a stay on that order. But now the Supreme Court is saying they do need to take matters and steps to facilitate his return. But unfortunately, they couldn't even answer the question of where he is at this present moment. She asked them 3 times. They were not able to say that. They said this is part of an interagency process and that they're going to need more time to get those answers. But obviously, it frustrated the judge. It also frustrated the lawyer of Abrego Garcia, who said that not only is this showing that the government isn't taking steps to bring him home, but that for the family, it's not bringing them any kind of solace because they're not able to find out where he is or communicate with them at all. Remember, while we're all talking about this, the Supreme Court is weighing in on the fate of this man. He has no idea any of this is happening because in that very secure CECOT prison in El Salvador, they're completely cut off from communication with the outside world.
I also want to ask you, this was a 9-0 ruling, but in the ruling, the Supreme Court said it wasn't sure if it had the authority to flat out order the U.S. to get this man back. And it took issue with how the lower court phrased the order. Can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, it all comes down to the word effectuate, and that's because the judge in the district court said that the government should facilitate and effectuate his return. I think where the rub is that if they take steps to facilitate to go to El Salvador and bring him home, that is all well and good and in compliance. But what happens if El Salvador actually says no, that he's now in their custody? After all, he is a national of that country. What if they say no? It's beyond the court's jurisdiction then to do something like bring in the U.S. military into El Salvador. So from what I understand from legal experts, that seems to be the line that the Supreme Court wants to make sure that the courts don't cross when ordering the government to bring this man home. But because of that discrepancy, the Justice Department today and the statements that they've put out are really seeing that Supreme Court decision as a win, when in fact the lawyers for this man say, no, it's blatant. The government needs to bring him home.
All right, Julia Ainsley, thank you so much. And right now in Louisiana, a critical hearing is underway in the case of Columbia University graduate student and activist Mahmoud Khalil, where an immigration judge is set to decide whether or not he can be deported. When asked to provide evidence that Khalil poses a national security threat, Secretary of State Marco Rubio wrote in a 2-page memo that while Khalil's, quote, past, current, or expected belief statements or associations that are otherwise lawful, the Secretary of State must personally determine that the alien's present or activities would compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest. All right, joining us now, NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vesugian. Yasmin, what does that mean? Is Rubio essentially saying, I have the power to determine if anybody can or cannot stay in this country?
Full stop, yes. That's exactly what he's saying. It's based on this little used provision from the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act fact in which they're citing essentially Mahmoud Khalil has an adverse effect on foreign policy in this country. And as you mentioned, I'll read it again because I think it's important, that the real kind of crux of this thing and the most important word in this entire provision is talking about how otherwise lawful, right? Statements or associations that are quote unquote otherwise lawful, then the Secretary of State must personally determine that the alien's presence or activities would compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest. So in fact, what he was doing was lawful. So Secretary Rubio says, okay, then it's on me, right? And I deem the fact that whatever Mahmoud Khalil was participating in on Columbia University's campus last year with the protesters has an adverse effect on foreign policy. Hence the reason why we feel as if he should be deterred at this time. And I will say, by the way, we have no news coming in from the hearing at this moment. We're about an hour and 25 minutes in, but no technology allowed inside. We have one producer inside who's going to rush out as soon as this thing wraps and tell us, because the judge is saying she's going to decide today, is he deportable? Is he not deportable? And the burden of proof is on the government here, right? And the proof that they're providing, the evidence that they're providing is these 2 pages, right? The 2 pages that I was reading from, part of which we read that quote from. That was all that was submitted, essentially, both to the attorneys of Mahmoud Khalil along with the court as well. And so in presenting this evidence, it seems the judge is going to have to decide based on this scant evidence provided by the government whether or not he is deportable and or not. If in fact she decides he is not deportable, the case ends here and he is in fact then released. However, of course, there will be an appeal by the U.S. government. If in fact they say he is deportable, that will be appealed by his attorneys. Again, there's also concurrently this federal case happening right now as well, in which his attorneys are lobbying for him to get returned to New Jersey. We know his wife is 8.5 months pregnant, along with lobbying against the fact that he was even initially detained on March 7th. And just quickly here, want to talk about the arguments being made by his attorneys, essentially saying that he acted as an arbiter, as someone who was negotiating with Columbia University's administration and trying to get what the protesters want through. And in fact, he was not protesting as an anti-Semitic protester. It was pro-Palestinian and anti-war.
All right. Yasmin Vasugian, thank you so much for wrapping all that up. And coming up, U.S. officials are headed to Amman this weekend for high-level talks with Iran. What's at stake when we return?
I request a colon cancer screening kit from Cologuard.com, and if I'm eligible, it gets delivered to my Trowbridge Aces.
Cologuard is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk. False positive and negative results may occur. Request a Cologuard kit online.
Enjoy the intense flavor of Lavazza Dolce Vita, also available in K-Cup pods.
Watch your back.
TikTok literally helped Danos grow from a one-man show to 45 team members in Louisville, Kentucky.
There's no way I'd be able to support this building or any of my employees without TikTok. It's not just about me anymore.
TikTok brings in so much foot traffic. To be able to have 28 employees and everybody's paid well, it's just a blessing.
And with your support today, you will help feed a hungry animal. You can fill their bowl, but you have to make your urgent life-saving gift today. Do it now, and we'll send you this welcome kit and this Animal Champion t-shirt to thank you for helping an animal today.
There's always an empty bowl on the ground that should have food in it. And it's very clear from the appearance of these dogs that that bowl hasn't had food in it for a long time.
We urgently need 3,000 new donors in the next 30 days. Please say you'll be one of them by signing up today. No animal should ever go hungry, and I know you agree. Please make this the moment that you say, I won't stand by while they suffer. Help fill their bowl too. Go online, call, or scan this code right now.
I know your MB mattress has luxurious hand tufting with gel-infused memory foam.
And it costs hundreds less than other national brands with a 20-year warranty.
That's 10 years more than theirs.
You've really done your research.
My husband Dean has always worried about his diabetes. He was afraid that once he reached retirement, he wouldn't be able to enjoy it. But getting Dexcom G7 has put Dean in control of his health. Wherever we go, we can easily manage his sugar levels and make sure he's staying in range. Dexcom G7 has given us confidence in the future, wherever it takes us.
Where to next? Meet Norman. He's part Jack Russell and part Tornado. Meet the Bissell Crosswave Hydro Steam. It's part vacuum, mop, steamer, and tornado chaser. Bissell, a new breed of clean.
Officials from Iran and the U.S. are set to meet tomorrow in Oman. President Trump has said he indicates that he hopes to reach a nuclear deal with the country in just several weeks. According to Axios, Iran is considering offering a potential interim agreement to boost confidence ahead of a potential larger deal. Among those attending the meeting will be Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who met with Vladimir Putin today in Russia. He's hoping to revive stalled ceasefire negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. All right, joining us now is former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and President of the Washington Strategy Group, Joel Rubin. All right, Joel, Trump said a few days ago that there's going to be consequences for Iran if they don't make a deal. So what needs to happen tomorrow in order to at least delay that threat?
Yeah, Christina, tomorrow's opening the door to diplomacy. The clock begins ticking according to President Trump. 60 days, we'll see. It might be like the TikTok clock that has extensions ongoing. But tomorrow, really, we're going to see Witkoff engage these Iranian interlocutors, the foreign minister, separately and then potentially together to decide whether or not they can actually have real diplomacy, because this is not an easy deal. This is not just coming to a two-page agreement and saying we're happy. This is about verification of a nuclear program that requires clear measurements, that has true international engagement and monitoring, and so it's going to have a lot of detail-oriented negotiations to follow on. We'll see if they come up with that tomorrow.
There's two things about this that seem interesting to me. First of all, this is a working level meeting, as you just talked about. Yeah. This is not Trump's usual style. You know, when he went to go negotiate with Kim, or like he likes to be in the thing and doing the thing himself. This is more standard for diplomacy. You send your guys first, they work out the details, and then you escalate it to a leaders meeting. The other thing that stands out, of course, is that in his first term, Trump pulled out of the JCPOA, which is the Iran nuclear agreement.
He did.
So what's different now?
Well, to be a little cynical, it sounds like he wants President Obama's Iran policy back, because he broke that deal, and that was a disastrous decision. It's been 7 years since that deal was ended, and we basically have seen Iran do nothing but accelerate its nuclear program. Now, there are different dynamics in the region, though, and this really matters. The Iranian proxies that they've been supporting for years have been decimated by Israel. Israel now is very concerned about Iran's closeness to nuclearization, and it also believes it has a window to strike. So the pressure is much higher now than before. But when President Trump walked away from that deal, he really turned his back on a strong, verifiable agreement that prevented Iran from getting to where it is today.
I mean, Netanyahu was just in the Oval Office, and Trump has said, you know, Israel would be involved in any strike on Iran if it came to that, which you just mentioned. Israel didn't like the first agreement. Are they going to like the second agreement? And is it kind of odd that they're going in separate directions? These two allies have been on the same page for a lot of things.
Yeah, I think the Prime Minister, he really swallowed hard at that Oval Office meeting. He did not want to be like Volodymyr Zelensky and argue in public. It would not have gone well for him. He understands that.
Yeah, that chair is like becoming the hot seat,
it's a
right?
Hot seat,
Yeah.
You know. But look, he did try to lay out conditions and parameters, and there's really two potential models here. There's what Israel's calling for the Libya model, which means complete eradication of the nuclear infrastructure in Iran. And then there's the JCPOA model, the Obama model, which means a verifiable agreement that prevents Iran from bolting to a nuclear weapon with enough time to monitor that. Those are the two poles. Bibi Netanyahu wants the first one, the Libya model, and I think President Trump is leaning towards that verification model right now.
Very quickly before I let you go, Steve Witkoff in Russia.
Yeah.
What are the odds that progress comes out of there?
Low. You know, Vladimir Putin might get more gifts, and then Steve Witkoff will come back and try to tell President Trump maybe we should stop giving him all these gifts. Might be time for some more pressure.
All right, Joel Rubin, thank you so much for joining us. And that's it for me today. Deadline White House starts after a quick break.
You want high-performance, long-lasting, affordable tools. You want Harbor Freight tools. Whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight. Save like never before at Spring Black Friday.
COPD is an ugly reality. I watch as this world just keeps getting smaller. But then, Trelegy helped us see things a little differently. With 3 medicines and 1 inhaler, Trelegy keeps airways open for a full 24 hours and prevents future flare-ups. Once daily Trelegy also improves lung function, so he can breathe more freely all day and night.
Trelegy won't replace a rescue inhaler for sudden breathing problems. Tell your doctor if you have a heart condition or high blood pressure before taking it. Do not take Trelegy more than prescribed. Trelegy may increase your risk of thrush, pneumonia, and osteoporosis. Call your doctor if worsened breathing, chest pain, mouth or tongue swelling, problems urinating, vision changes, or eye pain occur.
Ask your doctor about once daily Trelegy for COPD, because breathing should be beautiful all day and night.
This is what joint pain looks like when you keep moving with Aleve. Just one Aleve, 12 hours of uninterrupted joint pain relief. Aleve, strength to last 12 hours.
Used car shopping?
2 rows, 2 dogs. We're sold.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's pause for the facts. Like nearly half of all used cars, this puppy has been in an accident. But Carfax.com shows how an accident impacts price, so you don't have to overpay.
Huh.
Unpause. Whoa, whoa.
Wow, this is cool. Yeah, sorry, they pulled.
Shop with the facts at the all-new Carfax.com.
Sometimes you just need a moment. Self-care has never been this easy. Gummy vitamins from Nature Made, the #1 pharmacist recommended vitamin and supplement brand.
Work. Play. Blink. Relief. Work. Play. Blink. Relief.
The only 3-in-1 extended relief formula for dry eyes.
Blink.
Consumer Cellular is lowering the price for those 50 and up. Get 2 unlimited lines for $30 each. That's just $60 a month. So switch to the carrier ranked #1 in network coverage satisfaction. Now new customers get your second month free when you switch.
Toe fungus is tough to kill, and it can spread.
It's time to start using Fungi Nail. Maximum strength Fungi Nail is so powerful it cures and prevents fungal infections. Plus, it has aloe and tea tree oil to restore skin health. Say goodbye to toe fungus with Fungi Nail.
AI can turn your lights on.
Lights on.
And drive your car. And even write your kid's essay. But AI ain't gonna fix your broken water line or pay for the big repair bill. Having a plan from HomeServe offers real solutions. And when a covered system breaks, we'll send a qualified contractor and pay for the repair. There's nothing artificial about the peace of mind you get with a plan from HomeServe. Getting one is quite intelligent.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month.
Call 1-833-812-1903 or visit homeserve.com.
Okay, $1 million deal on the line. You got this. Recaps and sales meeting insights from all my team's calls? Otter AI. It's you who is man's best friend.
Otter, the AI meeting agent. This is my coffee shop. We just moved into a bigger space, brought on another employee, and ordered new branded gear for the team. It was so easy. I just chose my products, added our logo, and placed my order. Bring your own team together with custom gear. Get started today at customink.com.
What was it like when Trump got elected? What was the reaction? Do you think about ICE coming to knock on your front door?
For President Trump's first 100 days, Alex Wagner travels to the story to talk with people most impacted by the policies.
Were you there on January 6th?
I was there on January 6th.
Did it surprise you that you were fired, given how resolutely nonpartisan you have been?
And for more in-depth reporting, follow her podcast, Trumpland with Alex Wagner.
Hi there, everyone. Happy Friday. It's 4 o'clock in New York at the end of a volatile and dramatic week for the markets, for the global economy, for Main Street, for American households, for the whole country, the whole world, all because of one man, Donald Trump. The Dow today rising more than 600 points. It's after the White House said it was optimistic about a trade deal. And despite China raising its tariffs on American goods to 125%. There are other deeply ominous signs for the economy. A measure of consumer sentiment dropped to the lowest level in nearly 3 years, the second lowest level in the history of this survey being taken. And there's this too from CNBC, quote, respondents' expectation for inflation a year from now leaped to 6.7%, the highest level since November 1981, and up from 5% in March. So what that means is that the American consumer is now expecting inflation to go up, to be higher. And that sentiment comes 6 months after an election almost completely defined in the minds of swing voters by voter anger over the cost of living, the cost of stuff. CNBC adding this, quote, the survey showed unemployment fears rising to their highest since 2009. An economist tells CNBC, quote, consumers have spiraled from anxious to petrified. In the midst of this increasingly dire economic picture, you might think that business leaders would now feel comfortable about sounding the alarms. And make no mistake, they are alarmed. Headlines about a slowdown and warnings about the economy are everywhere you look. But brand new reporting suggests that they are now pulling their punches on what the cause of all of this uncertainty really is. Because as we said at the top, the cause is one man and one man only, Donald Trump. New York Times reports this, quote, Wall Street's biggest firms on Friday attempted the tricky two-step of revealing the toll of President Trump's whiplash tariff policy without outright criticizing the man who has repeatedly tangled with the financial industry for slights both real and imagined. It is becoming clear that if financial titans have flashed some anger around Trump's tariff policy, they are wary of criticizing the president directly. One reason is that Trump has shown he's willing to confront bankers publicly. Shortly after his inauguration, in a speech given remotely to executives gathered in Davos, Switzerland, Trump complained to Bank of America's chief executive, Brian Moynihan, that the lender's conservative customers were having their bank accounts closed.